March 30th, 1945. Römerstraße, Heidelberg, Germany. The fountain pen stopped mid-sentence as 23-year-old Ingrid Becker wrote in her journal, recording words that would have earned her immediate arrest if discovered by retreating Wehrmacht officers. The Americans are nothing like what they told us. They have chocolate, real chocolate, and they smile at children. Through the cracked window of her family's apartment, she had just witnessed something that contradicted 6 years of Nazi propaganda. American soldiers of the 63rd Infantry Division were distributing candy bars to German children, not the poisoned sweets that Goebbels had warned about, but genuine Hershey bars that made the children laugh for the first time in months. The GIs wore clean uniforms, had white teeth, and showed no signs of the barbarism that Nazi officials had promised would follow American occupation. 20,000 American soldiers entered Heidelberg that Good Friday without firing a shot. The university city had been declared an open city to preserve its medieval architecture. What neither the German women watching from behind curtains nor the American soldiers knew was that this moment would trigger one of the most complex social transformations in modern occupation history. A systematic breakdown of barriers between conqueror and conquered through the simple force of human nature. The statistics of romantic transformation were being written not in military directives, but in marriage applications that would soon flood American military offices. 14,000 German women would apply to marry American servicemen within 18 months, forever altering the trajectory of both nations. The speed of Germany's collapse in spring 1945 brought American forces into German cities faster than anyone had anticipated. Frankfurt fell on March 29, 1945, to General Patton's Third Army. Heidelberg surrendered the next day without resistance. Nuremberg, the symbolic heart of Nazism, fell on April 20th, Hitler's birthday. Munich was captured on April 30th, the same day Hitler committed suicide in Berlin. By July 4th, Independence Day, American forces entered their designated sector of Berlin. Among the first Americans to establish permanent headquarters was Colonel William W. Dawson, who would oversee the transformation of Heidelberg into the nerve center of American occupation. His diary, discovered in military archives decades later, would provide historians with the most detailed account of early German-American interactions from the military perspective. The first encounters between American soldiers and German civilians began within hours of occupation. Private First Class James Morrison of Brooklyn, serving with the 3rd Infantry Division, wrote to his mother on April 2, 1945, "The German people stare at us like we're from another planet. The women especially seem shocked that we're not the monsters they were told about. One old lady burst into tears when I helped her carry water buckets. She kept saying danke, danke over and over." But the most profound shock came from what the Germans saw of American abundance. Corporal Robert Hayes, stationed in Frankfurt, documented the reaction. "They can't believe how much food we have. Our K rations, which we complain about constantly, contain more meat than German civilians have seen in months. When we throw away half-eaten meals, the German kids fight over the scraps." The American military machine that rolled into Germany represented industrial might beyond German comprehension. The 12th Army Group alone consisted of 1.3 million men, supported by 460,000 vehicles, consuming 1.25 million gallons of gasoline daily. Each American division possessed more trucks than entire German Army Corps. The Dental Corps alone, treating soldiers' teeth, employed more dentists than existed in all of Bavaria. President Franklin D. Roosevelt had personally instructed General Dwight D. Eisenhower in September 1944. "The German people as a whole must have it driven home to them that the whole nation has been engaged in a lawless conspiracy against the decencies of modern civilization." This philosophy materialized as the non-fraternization policy, formally codified in Joint Chiefs of Staff Directive 1067, signed by President Truman on May 10, 1945. The policy was absolute. No American soldier could speak to a German adult except on official business. The penalty was severe, a $65 fine, equivalent to a private's entire monthly pay. Soldiers caught fraternizing faced court-martial and reduction in rank. Military police were instructed to patrol streets, parks, and cafes, arresting any Americans seen talking to German civilians. Technical Sergeant William Barnes of the 82nd Airborne Division kept a detailed account that survived in his personal effects. "The order is impossible. We're living among these people. German women work in our mess halls, clean our barracks, wash our uniforms. How can we not speak to them? Yesterday I was fined for saying Guten Morgen to our unit's cleaning lady, a 60-year-old grandmother." The first crack in the policy came remarkably quickly. On June 11, 1945, just 5 weeks after Germany's surrender, Eisenhower modified the order to permit soldiers to speak with German children. The sight of GIs playing with German youngsters, teaching them baseball, sharing chocolate, became common across the occupation zone. By July 1945, soldiers could converse with adults in public places, though entering German homes remained forbidden. The complete collapse came on October 1, 1945, when SHAEF, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, ended the fraternization ban entirely, except for prohibitions on marriage and billeting in German homes. "We knew it was over when we saw the dancing," wrote WAC Lieutenant Dorothy Patterson, stationed in Frankfurt. "The service clubs started holding dances in August. German girls would arrive in their best dresses, often their only dresses. The MPs were supposed to keep them out, but they gave up. By September, every dance had more German girls than American nurses." The winter of 1946–47 would enter German memory as the Hungerwinter, when temperatures dropped to -25 degrees Celsius and coal supplies ran out. But even before this catastrophe, German civilians faced starvation-level conditions that created a new economy based on American abundance. Official rations in the American zone provided 1,550 calories per day for normal consumers, but few Germans qualified for this category. Former Nazi Party members received 1,250 calories. In reality, most Germans subsisted on 700 to 1,000 calories daily. By comparison, American soldiers received 4,000 calories per day, while German prisoners of war in American camps received 2,800 calories, nearly 3 times what German civilians could obtain. Maria Hoffmann, a secretary from Munich who later emigrated to Chicago, recorded prices in her diary. 1 pound of butter costs 250 Reichsmarks on the black market, my entire month's salary. But the American's PX sells it for 26 cents. A carton of cigarettes that costs a soldier $1 trades for 1,000 Reichsmarks. We have become beggars in our own country. The black market centered on cigarettes as currency. American cigarettes were so valuable that German workers often preferred payment in cigarettes over Reichsmarks. A single Lucky Strike cigarette could buy a loaf of bread. A carton could purchase a camera, jewellery, or family heirlooms. Professional criminals called Schieber organised distribution networks, but ordinary Germans also participated in what they called the cigarette economy. Ursula Meyer, then 19, working as a typist at the American headquarters in Frankfurt, wrote in 1985, "My American boss paid me 120 Reichsmarks monthly, but he also gave me coffee, chocolate, and cigarettes as tips. The coffee alone was worth 500 Reichsmarks on the black market. Without his kindness, my family would have starved." The disparity was visible everywhere. American mess halls threw away more food daily than German families saw in a week. Sergeant Anthony Romano from Philadelphia documented, "We're ordered to pour bleach on leftover food so Germans can't eat it. It's horrible. Kids watching us destroy food while they're starving. Most of us ignore the order when officers aren't looking." German women in 1945 faced circumstances unique in modern history. Of Germany's male population aged 15 to 50, 4.8 million were dead 11 million were in prisoner of war camps, and millions more were disabled. In Berlin alone, women outnumbered men by 2 million to 1 million. These demographics created what historians called the surplus women problem. Millions of women with no prospect of marriage in a society where unmarried women had few economic opportunities. Elizabeth Kuhn, a teacher from Wiesbaden, described the situation in testimony given in 1980. "We were called rubble women, Trümmerfrauen, because we cleared bombed buildings with our bare hands for 72 Reichsmarks monthly. But teachers, secretaries, shopgirls, we all did the same work. Professional women became manual labourers because there was no other employment. Working for Americans offered escape from this grinding poverty. The US military employed 300,000 Germans by December 1945, including approximately 100,000 women as secretaries, translators, telephone operators, clerks, and domestic workers. These positions paid 3 times German wages and provided access to American goods. Anna Braun, who worked as a translator at Campbell Barracks in Heidelberg, recalled, "My American salary was 200 Reichsmarks, but the real payment was leftovers from the officers' mess. One day's scraps could feed my mother, grandmother, and 2 younger brothers for a week. The other German girls and I would carefully wrap every piece of bread, every half-eaten apple to take home." But employment came with social costs. Women who worked for Americans were labelled Ami-Liebchen, Ami lovers, or worse, Schokoladenmädchen, chocolate girls, implying they sold themselves for sweets. The term Veronika Dankeschön emerged as a bitter pun, VD, venereal disease, for women who supposedly thanked Americans for everything. "We were caught between survival and shame," testified Gertrude Wagner, who worked in an American motor pool. "If we took American jobs, we were traitors. If we dated Americans, we were whores. If we stayed home and starved, we were fools. There was no winning." The transformation of luxury goods into survival currency created a new social order in occupied Germany. American soldiers possessed wealth beyond German imagination: chocolate bars, instant coffee, canned goods, cigarettes, nylon stockings and soap, items that had disappeared from German life years earlier. Master Sergeant Dale Peterson from Iowa kept detailed records of the trading economy. 1 pair of nylon stockings equals 10 pounds of potatoes or 5 pounds of meat. 1 pound of coffee equals a man's suit. A carton of cigarettes equals a radio or camera. German families are trading centuries-old heirlooms for basic food items. The infamous coal trains demonstrated the desperation. German women would climb onto slow-moving coal trains to throw coal down to their families, risking death or arrest. When American MPs began guarding the trains, women offered various trades for the guards to look away. Hannelore Schmidt, interviewed in 1995, described the moral complexities. "My friend Greta dated an American sergeant. He gave her chocolates, coffee, stockings. She shared everything with 5 other families on our street. Was she a prostitute or a hero? We were too hungry to judge." The PX, post-exchange stores, became symbols of American abundance. These military stores, off-limits to Germans, displayed goods Germans hadn't seen since before the war: fresh fruit, meat, white bread, candy, clothing, radios and watches. German employees who worked in these stores described them as paradise. "Looking through the PX windows was torture," recalled Brunhilde Bauer. American wives buying 10 chocolate bars while German children begged for bread outside. The Americans weren't cruel. It was just their normal life. But their normal was our impossible dream. By autumn 1945, social interaction between American soldiers and German women had become unstoppable. Service clubs and dance halls opened across the American zone, theoretically for American personnel only, but increasingly filled with German women. The Femina Palace in Frankfurt, the Haus Vaterland in Berlin, and the America House venues became centres of a new social order. The dances followed a predictable pattern. German girls arrived in their best surviving clothes, often altered Wehrmacht uniforms dyed black or brown, the only fabric available. They had learned American dance steps from smuggled magazines and hidden radios. The bands, often composed of German musicians who had secretly preserved jazz recordings through the Nazi years, played Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, and Tommy Dorsey. Corporal Eugene Davis from Detroit wrote home in December 1945. The German girls are desperate to dance. They've been forbidden from dancing to American music for 12 years. They know every word to songs they've never been allowed to hear. It's heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. The dance halls represented more than entertainment. They were marketplaces of romance and survival. Military police reports documented the economy of these encounters. Admission for German women was often sponsored by American soldiers. One dance earned a chocolate bar. An evening's companionship might yield coffee and cigarettes. A steady relationship could mean family survival. Ilse Werner, who met her American husband at a Frankfurt dance in 1946, described the atmosphere. "We pretended it was about music and dancing, but everyone knew the truth. Girls without families to feed danced for joy. Girls with hungry siblings danced for food. The Americans knew it too, but what could anyone do? It was the reality we lived in." The prohibition on American-German marriages created a bureaucratic nightmare and human tragedy. Thousands of couples fell in love despite regulations, leading to elaborate schemes to circumvent military law. Some soldiers obtained false documents claiming their girlfriends were displaced persons from other countries. Others arranged proxy marriages through lawyers in America. Many simply lived together illegally, risking court-martial. The pressure for change came from unexpected sources. Military chaplains, initially opposed to German-American relationships, began advocating for marriage rights after counselling hundreds of sincere couples. Chaplain Major Thomas Anderson wrote in an official report, "These are not war trophies or conquests. I have married these men before combat and buried them after. They deserve the right to choose their own wives." On December 11, 1946, the ban was finally lifted, with conditions. German women seeking to marry Americans faced extensive investigation. Political background checks for Nazi connections, medical examinations, character references, and proof of sincere affection rather than economic motivation. The process took a minimum of 3 months and often much longer. Within 24 hours of the ban lifting, military offices received 2,500 marriage applications. By January 1947, that number had risen to 7,000. Each application required 15 different documents, 3 medical examinations, and interviews with military intelligence. Margareta Thompson, who married Sergeant James Thompson in 1947, described the humiliation. "They asked if I was a Nazi, if my parents were Nazis, if I had dated German soldiers, if I was marrying for money, if I was pregnant. They examined my entire life like I was a criminal. Jimmy was furious, but I told him it was worth it to be together." The War Brides Act, passed December 28, 1945, initially excluded German women entirely. Japanese and German nationals were specifically forbidden. It took 2 amendments in 1946 and 1947 before German war brides could legally emigrate. Even then, the process was agonizing. The first group of German war brides, 317 women and 147 children, departed from Bremerhaven on the USAT Henry Gibbons on February 3, 1947. They had waited an average of 8 months after marriage for permission to emigrate. Many had never left their home provinces before. Now they were crossing an ocean to a country where Germans were still widely hated. Ruth Patterson, née Müller, kept a diary of her journey. February 3rd, seasick and terrified. The American Red Cross ladies are kind, but other passengers avoid us when they hear our accents. A woman spat at me when she learned I was German. February 10th, saw the Statue of Liberty. Cried for an hour. Don't know if from joy or fear. The ships were often converted troop transports, basic but clean. The war brides travelled in cabins meant for 4 but holding 6 or 8. Children were separated into nurseries. Many women were pregnant. Military regulations required pregnant women to travel before their 7th month or wait until after delivery. The voyage was 13 days of uncertainty, recalled Hannelore Williams, née Schmidt. We taught each other English phrases. Thank you for having me. I am pleased to meet you. I will be a good wife. We were terrified of making mistakes in America. The arrival in America brought new challenges. Many war brides discovered their husbands had misrepresented their circumstances. Rich American businessman might mean gas station attendant. Big farm in Iowa could be a rented room above a garage. Some husbands had wives they hadn't divorced. Others had families who refused to accept German daughters-in-law. Immigration statistics tell part of the story. Between 1946 and 1950, approximately 14,000 German women emigrated as war brides. But numbers don't capture the individual struggles. In states with large German-American populations, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, integration was easier. In small towns where anti-German sentiment ran high, war brides faced boycotts, threats, and isolation. Martha Davis, née Becker, arrived in Alabama in 1947. My husband's family refused to meet me for 6 months. The neighbours called me Nazi when I walked to the store. The grocer wouldn't serve me until other customers complained. John defended me, but he worked long hours. I cried every day for a year. Yet success stories also emerged. German war brides often possessed skills, languages, music, crafts, that eventually won acceptance. They formed support networks, meeting in churches and community centres to share experiences and maintain German traditions. Many became active in communities, joining parent-teacher associations, church groups, and civic organisations. We had to be perfect, explained Ingrid Johnson, née Weber. Perfect wives, perfect mothers, perfect Americans. Any mistake reflected not just on us, but on all German women. We couldn't afford to fail. June 20th, 1948, marked the decisive transformation of German-American relationships. The currency reform replaced the worthless Reichsmark with the Deutsche Mark, instantly stabilizing the economy. Each German received 40 new marks, about $10, but the psychological impact was enormous. It was like magic, recalled Ursula Henderson, née Meyer. Friday, shop windows were empty. Monday, they were full. Suddenly, we had buying power. We didn't need to trade our bodies or dignity for food. We could work, earn, and buy like normal people. The black market collapsed overnight. Cigarettes returned to being cigarettes rather than currency. American soldiers could no longer live like kings on military salaries. German women who had dated Americans for survival could now choose relationships for affection. Captain William Stewart, military police commander in Frankfurt, reported, "The entire dynamic changed in one weekend. German girls who previously threw themselves at any American now became selective. Our men had to actually court them. Flowers, restaurants, genuine interest. It became more like dating back home." The economic recovery was dramatic. Industrial production increased 50% within 6 months. Unemployment dropped from 20% to 5%. German women returned to traditional employment, teaching, nursing, office work, at proper wages. The rubble women era ended as construction companies hired professional crews. This economic transformation fundamentally altered German-American relationships. "Before currency reform, we were beggars," stated Anna Coleman, née Brown. "After, we were partners." My relationship with Tom changed from dependency to equality. That's when I knew we could have a real marriage. Heidelberg became the unofficial capital of German-American romance. The city, undamaged by bombing, hosted the largest concentration of American forces in Europe. By 1950, 20,000 American soldiers and 5,000 family members lived there, transforming the medieval university town into a bicultural experiment. Campbell Barracks, renamed from the Wehrmacht's Großdeutschland Kaserne on August 23, 1948, became a self-contained American city. Mark Twain Village, built starting in 1948, provided suburban-style housing for American families. The shopping centre, completed in 1951, featured an American supermarket, beauty salon, and soda fountain, attractions that drew curious Germans despite being officially off-limits. The university played a unique role. American officers enrolled in German philosophy and literature courses, while German students taught English to soldiers' wives. Professor Wilhelm Hoffmann, who taught American students from 1947 to 1965, observed, "The classroom became neutral ground where former enemies discussed Goethe and Shakespeare as equals. Romance flourished in Heidelberg's unique atmosphere. The Neckar River Promenade, castle gardens, and student taverns provided settings for courtship impossible in destroyed cities like Frankfurt or Mannheim. Military authorities estimated that 30% of American soldiers stationed in Heidelberg for more than 6 months entered serious relationships with German women. Lisa Morgan, née Zimmermann, who met her husband in Heidelberg in 1949, remembered, "Heidelberg was like a fairy tale surviving in a nightmare. The castle, the old bridge, the student songs. It reminded Americans of romantic Europe. We could pretend the war hadn't happened, at least for an evening." Frankfurt emerged as the economic heart of the occupation. The IG Farben building, Europe's largest office complex, became American military headquarters from March 1945. The massive structure, which had housed the chemical conglomerate that produced Zyklon B, now administered the Marshall Plan and denazification programs. The American presence transformed Frankfurt into Manhattan on the Main. By 1949, 15,000 Americans lived in requisitioned housing, creating entire American neighborhoods. The Plattenstrasse housing project alone contained 777 apartments exclusively for American families. These enclaves featured American-style amenities, central heating, modern kitchens and playgrounds, luxuries most Germans wouldn't experience for another decade. The PX at Frankfurt became the largest American military store outside the United States. German employees described it as America in Deutschland, America in Germany. The store employed 500 Germans, creating one of the first spaces where Americans and Germans worked as colleagues rather than occupier and occupied. Margaret Anderson, née Schultz, who worked at the Frankfurt PX, met her husband there in 1950. The PX was neutral territory. Inside those walls, we weren't conquered and conquerors, we were co-workers. That's where real friendships and romances began. Frankfurt's nightlife centred on the Jazzkeller clubs that sprouted in bombed-out basements. These venues, technically illegal but tolerated by authorities, featured German musicians playing American jazz for mixed audiences. The Hot Club Frankfurt, founded in 1947, became legendary for its Saturday night jam sessions, where American soldiers and German musicians created a new cultural fusion. An estimated 94,000 children were born to German mothers and Allied fathers during the occupation, with American fathers accounting for approximately 37,000. These occupation children, or Besatzungskinder, faced unique challenges in a society struggling with its own identity. Children of white American fathers generally integrated more easily, especially if their parents married. But approximately 5,000 children were born to African American fathers, facing severe discrimination in a country with no significant black population and lingering Nazi racial ideology. Hans Johnson, born in 1947 to a German mother and African American father, described his childhood. "I was called Neger Mischling, Negro half-breed, daily. Teachers seated me separately. No German parents allowed their children to play with me. My mother lost jobs when employers discovered she had a black child. Some mothers placed mixed-race children in orphanages, hoping for adoption to America. The Brown Baby Plan, initiated by African-American journalist Mabel Grammer, successfully placed approximately 500 mixed-race German children with African-American families in the United States between 1951 and 1953. "My mother gave me up when I was 3, recalled Dorothy Brown, adopted in 1952. "She wrote me a letter I received when I turned 18, explaining she loved me but couldn't give me a future in Germany. She was right. My adoptive parents in Chicago gave me opportunities impossible in 1950s Germany." The America House program, launched in 1945, created cultural centers in major German cities aimed at democratization through exposure to American values. By 1950, 5 major centers operated in Berlin, Frankfurt, Munich, Hamburg, and Stuttgart, with smaller reading rooms in dozens of other cities. These centers offered Germans their first glimpse of American life beyond military occupation. Libraries contained books banned under the Nazis, Hemingway, Steinbeck, works by Jewish authors. Film screenings showed Hollywood movies and documentaries about American democracy. English classes, taught often by military wives, attracted thousands of students. Munich's America House, opened in 1946, became the most successful, attracting 80,000 visitors monthly by 1950. Director Robert McNamara, not the future Defense Secretary, reported, "Germans are hungry for American culture. They attend lectures on democracy, join discussion groups on federalism, check out books on American history. This is soft power at its finest." The German Youth Activities Program specifically targeted young Germans aged 14 to 25. GYA centres offered sports, crafts, music, and most popularly, dances. These supervised events provided approved venues for German-American interaction, reducing uncontrolled fraternization. Brigitte Cooper, née Wagner, who met her husband at a GYA dance in 1951, remembered, "The GYA dances were the only places our parents allowed us to meet Americans. They had chaperones, ended at 10 p.m, and served only soft drinks. But we learned American dances, jitterbug, swing, and felt connected to the wider world." As occupation shifted from punishment to alliance building, military policies evolved to accommodate families. By 1950, approximately 30,000 American military dependents lived in Germany. These families, especially wives, became unofficial ambassadors, breaking down barriers through daily interaction. Military wives employed German maids, shopped in German stores, when permitted, and enrolled children in German schools when base schools were overcrowded. These mundane interactions humanized the occupation for both sides. Dorothy Mitchell, a military wife in Frankfurt from 1949 to 1952, wrote in her memoir, "My German maid, Frau Klein, taught me more about Germany than any orientation briefing. She taught me to cook German food, explained local customs, and became my friend. When she told me about losing her son in Russia, I understood these weren't enemies but grieving mothers like anywhere." The military established German-American women's clubs in 1950, bringing together military wives and German women for cultural exchange. These clubs organized charity events, language exchanges, and social gatherings that created lasting friendships. The women's clubs broke down barriers faster than any official program, observed Colonel James Patterson, Community Relations Officer. When American and German mothers discussed children's illnesses, school problems, and husband troubles, politics disappeared. As the occupation evolved from conquest to alliance, relationships between American men and German women transformed accordingly. The desperate transactions of 1945 to 1948, food for companionship, gave way to more conventional courtships after currency reform. By 1950, a new pattern emerged. American soldiers stationed in Germany for 2-year tours had time to develop genuine relationships. German women, no longer desperate for survival, could choose partners based on attraction rather than necessity. The result was a dramatic increase in sincere, lasting relationships. Military chaplain records show the evolution. Marriages increased from 2,500 in 1947 to 5,000 in 1950, while the divorce rate among German-American couples dropped from 30% to 15%, comparable to American domestic rates. Sergeant Michael O'Brien, who married his German wife in 1951, explained the change. In 46, guys married girls they barely knew because they felt sorry for them or wanted to help. By 51, we dated for months, met families, learned the language. These were real relationships. The Korean War, beginning in June 1950, created urgency in many relationships. Soldiers facing deployment proposed quickly, leading to a spike in marriages. But these wartime marriages proved surprisingly durable. Military records show 70% lasted over 20 years. By 1955, when West Germany regained sovereignty and joined NATO, approximately 20,000 German women had emigrated to America as military wives. Their integration into American society varied dramatically based on location, education, and community acceptance. In cities with large German-American populations, war brides found established communities. Milwaukee's German neighborhood, Cincinnati's over-the-Rhine district, and St. Louis's German associations provided familiar food, language, and customs. War brides often became bridges between old German-American communities and modern Germany. Emma Roberts, née Fisher, who settled in Milwaukee in 1949, became president of the German-American Ladies' Society by 1960. The old German-Americans initially resented us as reminders of the Nazi era. But we brought contemporary German culture, not the preserved traditions from their grandparents' time. Eventually, we revitalized these communities. Rural areas presented different challenges. War brides in small towns often remained the only Germans for miles, facing isolation and suspicion. Some never fully integrated, maintaining German customs privately while publicly embracing American life. I became two people, explained Katharina Brown, née Schmidt, who settled in rural Arkansas. At home, I was German, cooking German food, speaking German to my children, maintaining German Christmas traditions. Outside, I was aggressively American, joining the PTA, volunteering for church functions, never mentioning my background. German war brides brought unexpected educational benefits to American communities. Many possessed superior education compared to average Americans. Gymnasium graduates knew multiple languages, understood classical music, and had studied literature and philosophy. School districts discovered German war brides made excellent teachers, particularly for languages and music. By 1960, hundreds taught in American schools, introducing improved language instruction methods and European classical education approaches. Dr. Margarete Williams, née Hoffmann, who became a high school German teacher in Ohio, revolutionized language instruction. American methods emphasized grammar and translation. I introduced conversational German, cultural immersion, student exchanges. My students didn't just learn German, they understood German culture. War brides also influenced American domestic life. They introduced German Christmas traditions, Advent calendars, Christmas markets, baking traditions that became mainstream American customs. German cooking techniques, household management, and child-rearing practices subtly influenced American suburban culture. We didn't realize our influence until years later, reflected Ingrid Thomas, née Bauer. Our American neighbors started making real coffee instead of instant, baking bread from scratch, maintaining gardens. We brought old-world skills to convenience-obsessed America. The psychological transformation of German women who married Americans reveals remarkable resilience. They navigated multiple traumas, surviving war and bombardment, enduring occupation and poverty, leaving homeland and family, adapting to foreign culture, and overcoming prejudice. Psychiatric studies from the 1950s documented high rates of depression and anxiety among war brides, but also remarkable adaptation. Dr. William Henderson's 1955 study of 500 German war brides found 60% reported complete satisfaction with American life after 5 years, compared to 40% after 1 year. The journey from defeated enemy to American citizen required complete psychological reconstruction, Dr. Henderson wrote. These women reinvented themselves, discarding German identity while preserving German culture, a complex balancing act requiring extraordinary psychological flexibility. Many war brides never discussed their experiences, even with their children. The silence stemmed from multiple sources: shame about Germany's wartime actions, fear of American prejudice, and desire to protect children from difficult history. Barbara Miller, daughter of a German war bride, discovered her mother's history only after her death in 1995. I found letters in German, photographs of bombed cities, a diary describing hunger and fear. My mother never spoke German at home, never mentioned her family, never explained her sadness when she heard German music. She erased herself to become American. German war brides became inadvertent cultural ambassadors during the Cold War. As tensions with the Soviet Union intensified, these women humanized Germany for Americans who might otherwise view Europeans through stereotypes. Their children, the second generation, often became bridges between cultures. Many pursued German studies, became translators, or worked in international business. Military records show children of German war brides enlisted at higher rates than average Americans, often requesting German assignments. Lieutenant Colonel James Müller, whose mother was a German war bride, served as liaison officer in Germany from 1975 to 1980. My mother's stories prepared me for Germany better than any military briefing. I understood German mentality, spoke the language, knew the culture. War bride children became valuable assets during the Cold War. The influence extended beyond military service. War bride children often pursued international careers: diplomacy, translation, international business. Major corporations recruited them for German operations, recognizing their unique bicultural understanding. "We were natural internationalists," explained Professor Maria Anderson, whose mother emigrated in 1948. "We grew up translating between cultures, explaining America to German relatives and Germany to American friends. This prepared us for globalized careers before globalization was a concept." The 1980s witnessed a remarkable phenomenon: war brides returning to Germany after decades of absence. Cheaper air travel, improved international relations, and retirement leisure enabled journeys impossible earlier. These reunions were often bittersweet. War brides discovered families divided by the Iron Curtain, hometowns unrecognizably rebuilt, and relatives who had mythologized or resented their American lives. Some found acceptance and reconciliation, others encountered lingering resentment. Hannelore Davis, née Schmidt, returned to Hamburg in 1985 after 38 years. "My sister had told everyone I abandoned the family for American luxury. The truth, that I sent money for 20 years, that my husband worked in a factory, that we struggled, didn't match their narrative. The reunion was painful but necessary." Some war brides organized group returns, chartering planes to visit homeland together. These groups provided emotional support for confronting difficult memories and changed landscapes. The largest, organized by the German War Brides Association of America in 1987, brought 300 women to Germany for a 2-week tour. "Returning together gave us strength," explained organizer Christina Thomas. "We could share shock at changes, grief for losses, joy at reunions." Individual returns were often traumatic, group returns were healing. The numbers tell a story of massive social transformation. Marriage statistics: 14,000 to 20,000 German women married American servicemen between 1946 and 1955. Peak year was 1946, with approximately 2,500 marriages. 70% of marriages lasted over 20 years, compared to 50% American average. 15% ended in divorce within 5 years. 15% ended with soldiers' death in Korea or subsequent service. Immigration patterns. First ship departed February 3, 1947, with 317 women. Peak immigration year was 1949 with 3,500 arrivals. Average wait between marriage and immigration, 8 months. 60% settled in urban areas, 40% in rural or small-town America. Geographic distribution: New York, 2,500 war brides, California, 2,000, Texas, 1,800, Pennsylvania, 1,500, Illinois, 1,200, Wisconsin, 1,000, Ohio, 900. Other states, 5,100. Children. Statistics: approximately 37,000 children born to American fathers and German mothers. 5,000 mixed-race children, African-American fathers. 500 mixed-race children adopted by American families. 80% of legitimate children emigrated with mothers. 20% remained in Germany with relatives. Employment patterns: 300,000 Germans employed by U.S. military, 1946. 100,000 German women in administrative service roles. Average German wage, 120 Reichsmarks monthly. American employment wage, 200 Reichsmarks plus benefits. Post-currency reform, wages equalized within 2 years. The relationship between German women and American GIs in post-war Germany created lasting transformations in both societies. These unions, born from unique historical circumstances, challenged prejudices created by cultural families and built human bridges between former enemies. The immediate post-war period, characterized by desperate survival strategies and prohibited fraternization, evolved into genuine cultural exchange as economic recovery and political normalization progressed. The 14,000 to 20,000 German women who married American servicemen faced challenges ranging from bureaucratic obstacles to social ostracism, yet most successfully integrated into American society. Their children, the second generation, became natural ambassadors between cultures, contributing to German-American relations during the Cold War and beyond. Many pursued international careers, leveraging bicultural understanding in an increasingly globalized world. We were accidents of history who became agents of reconciliation, reflected Anna Patterson, née Mueller, at a 1995 war bride reunion. Our marriages, born from war's chaos, helped build peace. Our children became bridges between former enemies. Our lives proved that human connection transcends national hatred. By 1955, when the occupation officially ended and West Germany joined NATO, the relationship between Germans and Americans had fundamentally transformed. The desperate fraternization of 1945, driven by hunger and loneliness, had evolved into partnership between allies. The German women who had cleared rubble for starvation wages now worked as respected employees in American installations. Those who had traded dignity for chocolate could shop with Deutsche Marks in recovering economies. The Ami-Liebchen who faced ostracism for dating Americans now saw American-German friendship as national policy. Wolfgang Petersen, son of a German war bride, captured this transformation in his 2000 documentary Bridges of Love. My mother's generation built bridges with their bodies and hearts that politics couldn't construct. They were criticized, ostracized, celebrated, and ultimately vindicated. Their personal choices became historical forces. The occupation years revealed fundamental truths about human nature under extreme conditions. When survival is threatened, social barriers collapse. When basic needs are met, genuine relationships become possible. When former enemies interact as individuals rather than nationalities, reconciliation follows. The magnitude of the German-American encounter in occupied Germany can be measured in revealing statistics that demonstrate both the scope of the transformation and its lasting impact. Occupation force strength. Peak U.S. military presence, 1.6 million, May 1945. Stabilized occupation force, 200,000, 1946 to 1950. Military dependents in Germany, 30,000 by 1950. German employees of U.S. forces, 300,000, 1946. Total Americans cycling through occupation, 3 million, 1945 to 1955. Economic disparities. German civilian rations, 1,000 to 1,550 calories daily. American military rations, 4,000 calories daily. German average monthly wage, 120 Reichsmarks. Black market carton of cigarettes, 1,000 Reichsmarks. PX price for same carton, $1, 10 Reichsmarks official rate. Social transformation dance halls operating in U.S. zone, 450 by 1947. America House visitors monthly, 80,000, Munich 1950. German youth activities participants, 250,000 annually. German-American women's clubs, 85 chapters, by 1952. Cultural exchange program participants, 500,000, 1945 to 1955. Relationship outcomes. Marriage applications. First day of legalization, 2,500. Total marriages during occupation, 14,000 to 20,000. War brides emigrating to America, 14,000 confirmed. Children from German-American relationships, 37,000. Mixed-race children, 5,000. Successful adoptions to America, 500. Geographic impact, major occupation centers, Frankfurt, Heidelberg, Munich, Stuttgart, Berlin. Heidelberg American population, 20,000 continuous. Frankfurt requisitioned apartments, 3,700. Campbell Barracks capacity, 10,000 soldiers. Mark Twain Village housing units, 800. Patrick Henry Village area, 97.5 hectares. The individual voices of German women who lived through the occupation provide the human dimension to historical statistics. Their stories, preserved in letters, diaries, and oral histories, reveal the complexity of survival, adaptation, and transformation. Lieselotte Williams, née Krüger, interviewed in 1990, provided detailed insight. People today cannot understand the desperation of 1945. My father was dead in Russia, my brother missing in action, our house destroyed. I was 19, educated, spoke English, but there was no work except clearing rubble for 72 Reichsmarks monthly, not enough for food. When the Americans advertised for translators, 500 women applied for 10 positions. I was lucky. My gymnasium English impressed them. Suddenly I earned 200 Reichsmarks plus access to the canteen. The other women called me Amihure, American whore, though I only translated documents. I met Bill at work. He was kind, respectful, different from the Nazi propaganda stereotypes. We dated secretly for 6 months. Fraternization was still banned. When we could finally marry in 1947, my mother disowned me. She said I betrayed Germany. She never met her grandchildren. In America, I faced different prejudice. Bill's family in Iowa had lost a son in Normandy. His mother asked if my family were Nazis. When I explained my father died fighting a war he didn't believe in, she cried and embraced me. That moment, I became American. My children grew up bilingual, bicultural. My daughter became a translator for the State Department. My son, an army officer who served in Germany. They built bridges I could only dream of. That's our legacy, from rubble women to bridge builders in one generation. Military authorities struggled to manage the rapidly evolving situation between American forces and German civilians. Initial policies based on punishment and separation collapsed against human nature and practical necessities. General Lucius Clay, military governor of the American zone, privately acknowledged the futility of non-fraternization. Young men and young women will find each other regardless of regulations. Our choice is to channel these interactions constructively or face chaos. The establishment of official venues, service clubs, America Häuser, GYA centres, represented pragmatic acceptance of inevitable social interaction. These controlled environments provided safer alternatives to underground dance halls and black market encounters. Military police reports from 1946 reveal the scope of the challenge. Enforcement of non-fraternization is impossible without destroying troop morale. Soldiers with excellent combat records face court-martial for speaking to German civilians. Meanwhile, black market fraternization flourishes beyond our control. The shift from prohibition to regulation proved successful. Venereal disease rates, which had exploded to 250 per 1,000 soldiers in late 1945, dropped to 50 per 1,000 by 1948 after establishment of supervised social venues and medical education programs. The June 1948 currency reform didn't just stabilize the economy, it revolutionized social relationships between Americans and Germans. Overnight, the power dynamic shifted from occupier-occupied to something approaching equality. Margot Henderson, née Brown, described the immediate change. Saturday, June 19th, I was considering becoming an officer's mistress for family survival. Monday, June 21st, I had a real job at real wages. The desperation disappeared overnight. Suddenly we could choose relationships for love, not food. American soldiers also noticed the transformation. Sergeant Paul Anderson wrote home in July 1948. The German girls changed overnight. Before, they'd date anyone for chocolate. Now they're selective. A private with no prospects gets ignored. They want sincere relationships, not meal tickets. The economic recovery enabled normal courtship patterns. Restaurants reopened, accepting Deutsche Marks rather than cigarettes. Cinemas showed German and American films. Dance halls operated commercially rather than through military subsidies. Dating became possible rather than transactional. This normalization produced stronger marriages. Pre-currency reform marriages showed 30% divorce rates within 5 years. Post-reform marriages showed only 15% divorce rates, suggesting economic stability enabled better partner selection. The 37,000 children born to German mothers and American fathers faced unique challenges. Those whose parents married gained American citizenship and often emigrated. Those whose fathers abandoned them, the majority, remained in Germany as social outcasts. Klaus Thompson, born 1947, described his experience. My mother told neighbours my father died in the war, but my features were clearly un-German. Kids called me Ami bastard. Teachers ignored bullying. No apprenticeship would accept me. Only when I emigrated to find my father in 1968 did I escape the stigma. Mixed-race children faced particular hardship. German society, still influenced by Nazi racial ideology, had no framework for accepting black Germans. Mothers faced pressure to institutionalize these children or place them for adoption abroad. Toxie, a 1952 German film about a mixed-race occupation child, brought national attention to their plight, but also reinforced stereotypes. The film's portrayal of the child as problem requiring solution rather than citizen deserving acceptance reflected contemporary attitudes. Yet some mixed-race occupation children succeeded despite obstacles. Hans-Jürgen Massaquoi, son of a German mother and Liberian father, though not American, became a successful journalist and wrote extensively about growing up black in Nazi and post-war Germany, providing voice to similar experiences. The presence of American forces introduced cultural changes beyond jazz music and chewing gum. German women who worked for or married Americans became conduits for profound social transformation. American informality challenged German hierarchical traditions. German secretaries addressed American officers by first names, unthinkable in German offices. American soldiers played with German children, treating them as equals rather than subordinates. These interactions modelled democratic social relationships. Americans taught us we could question authority, recalled Brigitte Coleman, née Fisher. My American boss asked my opinion about office procedures. No German superior had ever valued my thoughts. This was revolutionary, the idea that ordinary people's opinions mattered. American consumer culture also transformed German expectations. PX displays showed abundance beyond German imagination. American magazines, circulating through military families to German employees, depicted suburban homes with modern appliances, automobiles, and leisure activities. These images inspired German reconstruction. The economic miracle of the 1950s wasn't just about production, it was about reimagining possibility. German women who had seen American lifestyles demanded similar comfort and convenience, driving consumer demand that fueled recovery. Military chaplains played unexpected roles in German-American relationships. Initially opposing fraternization, many became advocates for international couples after witnessing sincere relationships develop despite regulations. Chaplain Thomas O'Brien's 1947 report influenced policy changes. I have counselled hundreds of couples. These are not conquests or conveniences, but genuine loves. German women risk ostracism. American soldiers risk court-martial, yet they persist. This suggests divine blessing rather than base impulse. Churches became neutral meeting grounds. Military chapel services, open to Germans from 1946, attracted young Germans curious about American Protestantism. German churches hosting American services discovered GIs contributing generously to reconstruction funds. Interfaith relationships created additional complications. Catholic-Protestant marriages required special dispensations. Jewish soldiers dating German women faced particular scrutiny given recent history. Yet love transcended religious boundaries as it had national ones. Faith became our bridge, explained Ruth Anderson, née Wagner, a Lutheran who married a Catholic sergeant. We couldn't agree on theology, but we agreed on values, family, service, compassion. That foundation sustained our marriage for 40 years. The decade of American occupation fundamentally altered both German and American societies. The 14,000 to 20,000 German women who married American servicemen created permanent links between former enemies. Their 37,000 children became living bridges between cultures. Beyond individual relationships, the occupation transformed German society. Exposure to American democracy, consumer culture, and social informality influenced the Federal Republic's development. The German economic miracle wasn't just industrial recovery, but also social transformation inspired by American models. American society also changed, though more subtly. War brides introduced German efficiency, education emphasis, and cultural traditions that enriched American communities. Their children often became international specialists, contributing to American global engagement during the Cold War and beyond. We were unintended ambassadors, reflected Christina Patterson, née Müller, at a 2000 reunion. Our marriages weren't just personal choices, but historical forces. We proved enemies could become allies, hatred could become love, destruction could become construction. Historians recognize the German-American relationships of 1945 to 1955 as crucial to successful occupation and subsequent alliance. Unlike harsh occupations that bred resentment, American pragmatism about fraternization enabled reconciliation. Dr. Maria Höhn, leading scholar of occupation relationships, concludes, "The marriage of German women and American soldiers accomplished what diplomatic treaties couldn't: human reconciliation between former enemies. These relationships, initially driven by desperation and loneliness, evolved into genuine partnerships that modeled democratic alliance." The contrast with Soviet occupation is instructive. While Soviet forces also formed relationships with German women, Official prohibition and lack of marriage possibilities prevented lasting bonds. The American zone's evolution from prohibition to acceptance created enduring connections. Critics note the relationship's problematic aspects: power imbalances, economic coercion, abandoned children. Yet most scholars acknowledge that permitting legitimate relationships proved more humane and politically successful than maintaining impossible prohibitions. In 1995, the 50th anniversary of occupation's end, surviving war brides held their largest reunion in Washington, D.C. Over 500 women, now grandmothers, gathered to share experiences hidden for decades. Keynote speaker Ingrid Morrison, née Becker, whose journal opened this story, reflected on their journey. "We were young women in history's crossroads, defeated but not broken, desperate but not degraded. We chose love over hate, hope over despair, future over past. They called us opportunists, traitors, whores. We were none of these. We were survivors who became builders. Our marriages built bridges. Our children became citizens of the world. Our lives proved that enemies need not remain enemies. To our daughters and granddaughters, we gave you dual heritage not as burden but as blessing. You carry both German and American traditions. You understand that patriotism doesn't require hatred of others. You know that love transcends borders. To historians, don't romanticize our stories. We suffered discrimination, abandonment, and isolation. Many sisters fell to prostitution, suicide, or madness. We survivors carry their memories alongside our successes. To those who judge us, walk in our shoes. Face starvation, bombardment, and occupation. Choose between collaboration and starvation. Then judge whether trading companionship for chocolate was sin or survival. We transformed from rubble women to American citizens, from enemies to allies, from desperate girls to determined women. Our legacy isn't just successful marriages but proved possibility, that from war's destruction can emerge peace's construction. The auditorium erupted in standing ovation. American husbands, bicultural children, and German women united in recognition of extraordinary ordinary women who bridged the unbridgeable. The story of German women and American GIs in post-war Germany ultimately transcends national narratives. It reveals humanity's capacity for connection despite official prohibition, for love despite recent hatred, for building despite surrounding destruction. These women, whether they married Americans or simply worked alongside them, participated in one of history's most successful occupations. Their relationships, ranging from desperate survival strategies to genuine romances, humanized former enemies and enabled reconciliation. The transformation from the desperate fraternization of 1945 to the partnership of 1955 parallels Germany's evolution from defeated enemy to democratic ally. The personal became political as individual relationships modelled international reconciliation. Today, descendants of these unions serve in militaries, diplomatic corps, and international organisations worldwide. They carry dual heritage that enables understanding across cultures. They prove that from war's destruction can emerge unexpected construction. The German women who met American GIs in spring 1945 couldn't imagine they were beginning a transformation that would reshape both societies. They thought only of survival, finding food, avoiding rape, protecting family. Yet their individual choices accumulated into historical force. In the end, that's history's lesson. Great transformations begin with individual decisions. A hungry woman accepting chocolate from a lonely soldier, a military policeman ignoring fraternization violations, a chaplain blessing a forbidden marriage. These small mercies accumulated into massive change. The rubble women of 1945 became the bridge builders of 1955. Their journey from desperation to dignity, from survival to citizenship, from enemy to family, remains one of the 20th century's most remarkable transformations. They proved that even in history's darkest moments, human connection endures, adapts, and ultimately transcends the barriers that divide us. Their legacy lives not in statistics but in families spanning continents, in children who speak multiple languages, in grandchildren who see no contradiction in being both German and American. They proved that love, however complicated its origins, can conquer even the deepest hatreds. The fountain pen that recorded Ingrid Becker's first impression of Americans in March 1945 would later write letters to Iowa describing her new American life. The transformation was complete. The conquered had become family, the occupied had become citizens, the enemies had become the closest of allies. That transformation, replicated thousands of times in individual lives, changed the course of history. From the rubble of total war emerged not just physical reconstruction, but human reconciliation. The German women and American GIs who found each other in occupation's chaos created from destruction something neither side had imagined possible: lasting peace built on personal connection. Their story reminds us that history's great transformations often begin not in parliaments or palaces, but in the simple human moments when former enemies discover their shared humanity. In occupied Germany, that discovery began with a chocolate bar, a smile, a dance, and ended with families that spanned oceans and generations that embodied reconciliation. The German women who experienced American occupation didn't just witness history. They transformed it through countless individual acts of courage, compromise, and connection. Their legacy endures in every family reunion that crosses the Atlantic, every bilingual grandchild, every moment when former enemies meet as friends. They were ordinary women in extraordinary circumstances who proved that human resilience and adaptability can transform even history's darkest chapters into bridges toward a better future. Their journey from rubble to reconciliation remains testament to the power of human connection to transcend the divisions that history creates. In the final analysis, the story of German women and American GIs in post-war Germany is neither purely romantic nor entirely tragic. It is, like all human history, complex, contradictory, and ultimately transformative. From the depths of defeat and desperation emerged connections that helped reshape the post-war world, proving that even in ruins, humanity finds ways to rebuild not just buildings, but bonds between peoples. The occupation ended officially in 1955, but its human legacy endures in millions of descendants who carry both German and American heritage, in the deep alliance between nations that were once bitter enemies, and in the proof that from war's destruction can emerge peace's most unexpected constructions. Families that span the divisions history creates, children who embody reconciliation, and love that transcends the boundaries of nation, language, and the bitter past.